just give it away. She said, give it away, give it away now. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. Give it away, give it away, give it away.
Man, well, that'll wake you up.
Hopefully you listen to this in the morning. That's your alarm clock now.
I need to be woken up. After the wild parties at the Slingerland residence this past weekend. Sorry, McCluskey, we missed you, man.
That's right. I would have enjoyed it. And, man, I was hard to not be there.
Yeah, we had a great time. Jamie, thank you again for hosting. It was a fun weekend to be together, deep in conversation, and you and Ruthie are the consummate hospitality hosts. And you can check out the whole new Franklin perch. That was pretty cool, too.
Insert the link to my Airbnb.
This episode sponsored by the Franklin Perch.
I'll give you guys an affiliate for that one.
Nice.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneurial Family Man podcast. I am Chris Niemeyer, here with my good friends, Michael McGreevy, Christopher McCluskey, and Jamie Slingerland. We are four guys crazy about our wives. We love our kids, and we want to kill it in business. And this show is just dedicated to those important domains in our lives, a safe place to discuss the tension that exists as you're trying to live out this entrepreneurial lifestyle. So today we want to reference a topic that's important to really anyone, but we had a pleasure being together over the weekend. Shout out to our friend, our mentor, Dan Miller. We've been part of his mastermind for a number of years, and we're all together at the mastermind meetup there in Franklin, Tennessee. The theme was living well, giving well. And we had a couple days there to just talk about this important topic of what's all this that we do for, right? We all engage in commerce and entrepreneurial endeavors to make a lifestyle, hopefully make a little profit along the way. What do we do with that? Not just the financial topic, but also the important ways that we give our time and our talents, our skill sets, our abilities. And so it was just a rich weekend to talk about that. And so today we want to just continue that conversation of living well, giving well, and 3 points around that. So number one, what if finances are tight?
I mean, logically, it doesn't make sense, right? If you have less money to give it away, if you give away more money, then you have less money. That logically, like if you're crazy, you would give away money if you are short on money. But we don't think that way, right? We have almost a completely different economy and thought process around this thing of money. And this is a great group of people, our mastermind. And I know a couple of the successful people in it who even manage money for a living and focus on finances for a living. One of the things they said was that's the only magic bullet in financial success that they've seen is giving away money. That one stopped me in my tracks. When I heard somebody say that out loud, wait, a magic bullet of financial success is actually giving money away and not hoarding it and keeping it and building it and keeping it for yourself? That's interesting. So that kind of plays into this first point that we're talking about. When things are tight, and they will be, when you're an entrepreneur, there's going to be moments when things are tight and moments when things are great. Maybe there's a different way to approach scarcity than to try to hold on to it.
I know for me, it has been one of those things that if I leave it to the place of trying to see, well, how are we doing this month? How much can we give this month? It becomes one of those things that I typically would be giving less than my heart would have desired to, and probably then that even less than what was needed in a particular situation. But I'm giving because I waited to see how everything else played out. Well, we know we've had conversations here among ourselves just about the concept of profit first, right, in our business. When we're setting things up, we're all Christians, and our understanding is that not only are we called to give and that it's a joy to give, but we're told to give of our first fruits, not the leftover fruits or see how the month was and then give the fruit. It's the first stuff, the best stuff. You bring in the harvest and you go, oh man, the first harvest, here goes the 10th of it off to the side. So putting things in place that for me automatically pull out the percentages that I've plugged in for the various things from our church to the various ministries that we support so that it comes out like my taxes come out. That has been a huge help for me because there, it's not going to be a matter of evaluating, can we really afford to give that much this month? It's already gone. It's given because it was given out of a joyful heart in alignment with my conviction. And then the Lord does certainly still profit the work of his children. It's not a quid pro quo. It's not like a trade kind of a thing. I know that's not what we're suggesting. But I definitely find that if I leave it to myself to gauge on the back end, there's never as much giving as when I just do it on the front end out of the conviction that this is, it's all bearing testimony that everything we have is from him anyway.
That's a good,
good doubt.
word.
McCluskey, I've never at the end of the month been sitting in a pile of money, been like, oh man, I've tried to put this somewhere, and I just have nowhere to put it. What am I going to do with this money? You can find a place to put it if it's there in front of you. So, that's such a good word, deciding before everything comes and takes it away where it's going to go in that giving realm. I love that.
And that's a good way to approach that too, Chris, because it's a conviction, like you said, that this is, you're taking a step away from even looking at the bank account beforehand. And it's like, I'm almost picturing this as the 2 C's. You have a choice or you make a commitment. If you look at it as a choice, at the end of the month, you're like, well, as long as we have above this, then I'll give. If not, I'm not going to do it. No, this is a commitment that you've made, again, like you just said, around your values, aligned with your heart of giving. So I like that this is truly it's a conviction that you make and a commitment that you're pulling this out of the account before it even, gets disseminated elsewhere. Michael, you actually shared one of my favorite verses, and I've heard this said before too, and I don't know how accurate this is, but I've heard it said that this is the only time in the Old Testament where God says, test me. And it comes from Malachi 3:10, where he says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if it will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. And we even referenced that a little bit in that weekend because there was even this question of well, do you tithe on your gross versus your net? And it was just that kind of quippy reply of well, do you want him to bless you on your gross or your net?
Right.
Oh man, I love that story that David Hancock shared too about his church. His pastor challenged his entire church, which is over 1,500 people, I think. If you give, I don't know if it was an exact number that he shared, maybe it was just a tithe. He challenged his entire congregation. If you give money at this amount and it doesn't come back to you in that exact amount or more within the next 30 days, I will personally write you a check. Each one of you a check. That could have been millions of dollars in that congregation. And this pastor didn't get one request to have that check written back because God blessed every one of them and that returned to them. It sounds a little bit like we're passing a collection plate around here at EFM. We are not doing that, and we're not asking for money. But this is powerful. When you give and commit to giving, God promises right here in Malachi that it's not only going to come back to you, you're not even going to have a place to put this stuff. There's going to be so much that I bless you with.
You want a case example of that? I just came back from this conference out in California, and it was all Christian business owners, leaders of Christian businesses on an international plane, and this is their big annual collaborative conference. Had an amazing arrangement of speakers, Vern Harnish on scaling up, and Horst Schulte, the guy that founded Ritz-Carlton and Capella Group for ultra-luxury hotels. Amazing list of speakers, and one of them was Pastor Rick Warren. So Rick Warren may be a name that for some, has some kind of controversiality to it. I don't care because what he shared was just powerful. He was in that group of very moneyed potential influencers, Christians who own businesses. And he was talking to them about this issue of giving, of tithing. And he said, Kay and I, when we first got married and we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, we tithed our 10% because, of course, that was just a conviction that we had. And we made a decision as a couple that every year we would not try to, we would increase the percentage that we tithed. And so he said, for example, the next year we then tithed 11%. And the year after that, we tithed 12% of our gross. And he said the next year, we actually were so excited by what we were seeing in the Lord still blessing and providing and us learning different ways to live. He said we jumped from 12% to 15%. And they continued. So he's one of those reverse tithers where he tithes more than 90% of his income. Well, everybody knows there's millions and millions of dollars coming in potentially. Everything that has ever come in from, for example, his world's best-selling book besides the Bible, The Purpose-Driven Life, it's all been given away. They've kept none of it. And that's just one of his books. All of that stuff that's come in, there's an example of a man who's done things all around the world on governmental levels affecting whole countries and economies because he was just a conduit for the Lord blessing and giving away. And what a joy. I want to give more away next year. I don't want to give more away then. And the Lord is faithful. That's about God. That's not about Rick Warren. But it was pretty awesome to hear him share something like that.
McCluskey, that's pretty awesome. And on the heels of McGreevy reading that scripture verse from Malachi that says, "Test me," a tithe is a tenth. The actual word means 10%. And Rick, I mean, whatever you think about him, whether he's controversial or not, like there's no doubt, there's no controversy of him having that financial success and him being blessed financially with, the books that he's written, everything like that. But I love the fact that he literally tested God, where he said, "This is your idea of taking a tenth, and we're going to test it out and maybe even give more." So that's pretty cool. Obviously, it worked for him. So maybe we want to think about how we could try something like that.
Well, I think in the Old Testament, at least, it's tithes and offerings. And the Lord actually asks of that. The tithe is his, he says. Offerings are even like above and beyond. Like that's where it's like, you go to something and then someone's asking for whatever, and there's a story and you're like, man, this hurts. This is like even above and beyond like the tithe, but to give it, freely out of that generous heart. So guys, I have to share something because you guys triggered a story that I forgot to even share with you yet. But, right now we're talking about financial, right, giving. And there's other ways that I think that Malachi verse could even come back in new ways. So we're together for the weekend. I fly back into Tampa. Alicia picks me up with the kids. This is Saturday night, dinner time. And I'd asked her, like, hey, find a place near the airport. Let's get some food together. So I'm in the car, right? The kids are like, oh, Daddy. It's just loud, crazy stuff. And she hands me the phone like, hey, can you pick one of these places on Yelp? Quickly looked at it. I was like, oh, Korean barbecue. Looks good. Let's do that. So we're like driving in a different part of town that we've never been to before. And but we're just talking, kind of uploading, downloading the weekend and catching up. And she's like, Korean barbecue is down this way? I feel like we're going to someone's house. And sure enough, we're in this neighborhood of just all around. And we pull up to this place, and there's a parking lot full of cars and people outside hanging out. It says Conan's Barbecue, not Korean, but Conan's Barbecue, right? We go to the door, we knock in because it's locked. This big old guy comes out. And so come to find out, this is Conan, the owner, right? And he welcomes us in. He goes, man, I am craving some Krispy Kreme donuts right now. And we're like, okay, like our first entrance here is a little odd, right? Well, so we make our order. We're waiting, and we're waiting for quite a while. And Alicia overhears one of the customers say, is it your birthday today, Conan? And we can't quite tell if it was for real or not, but she's like, you know what? We have some time. Like, there's a Krispy Kreme donuts like a mile and a half down the road. Go get him some donuts. So I take the two girls. We go over through this neighborhood. We pick up the donuts. They come in, and we're still waiting for food. It's been almost an hour now. But the two little cute girls, each with their like 6 donuts each in a box, and we go around to the back side of the kitchen, and Conan sees it. He almost starts crying. He is like, oh my goodness, girls, no way. He goes, I love Krispy Kreme. So here's what happens, right? We give this, he's trying to like give half back because he wants the kids to have donuts. We're like, no, please, like, we want food. He is blown away. He starts just like singing, like he's giving donuts around to his staff. Then, of course, we finally get our meal where we just ordered a few things. We still have food in our fridge from all the food that he gave us. I mean, he gave us twice the sides that we wanted, more meat than we wanted. He was just like, you guys come back here anytime to be my guests.
Wow. That is so cool.
It was just a cool story of like, and to take that drive with my daughters and tell them like, we're doing this because this is a guy who we don't know yet, but he said he likes Krispy Kreme donuts. It's down the street. We have the time. Like, let's just give generously, you know? So it's just been a fun conversation to talk about what we've learned from the weekend. And like the Lord gave us this immediate opportunity to apply it.
Oh my gosh, that's golden.
Yeah. What I love about that is it wasn't complex. You didn't have to sit down and craft this plan of how you're going to give over the next 6 months. You saw an opportunity and you just jumped on it and said, oh, this is going to be awesome. I can give this guy what he needs right now and brighten his day, and you acted on it. That is a lot of what giving is about too, is just in the moment going for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which really, it gets us to this point number 2 here, that in giving, generosity is a state of mind, right? And it could be finances, it could be a giving of our time, or in little different ways. But how do we approach this generosity as a mindset in our lives?
Christine was the one that made that statement that blew us all away, right? About the magic bullet. But she also pointed out the most impactful ways of giving were actually just like what you said with Conan's restaurant. It just came up out of that abundance mindset, just being open to some spontaneous gift, because giving can bring so much healing to somebody if we're sensitive of God's Spirit and we do it in the right context with the right heart. And it just spreads like a fire of people being more hopeful.
You reminded me of a story. Lydia and I were taking a walk one time with Gunnar when he was a baby, and we live in this neighborhood where there are some wealthy people that are nearby. And while we were walking down the sidewalk, we saw this couple. They were a refugee couple we later learned were from the Congo. And they had this enormous couch in their hands, and they're carrying it back toward the west side, which was probably 8 blocks from where they were. And they were dropping it as they were going. And they had another piece to get that was behind them too. So they're sweating. It's the middle of the summer. They're trying to carry it. And it just hit me that I have a truck just 2 blocks away. I could drive over, throw this thing in the back of my truck, and have it there in a couple minutes, and it would save them a full day of carting the stuff around, and they would have this couch that they got out of the garbage. And so I'm just like, Lydia, I'm just going to run back, get my truck, help these people out. We'll be done before you know it. So I go and grab my truck. We load this couch sectional into my truck. They jump in with me. We drive over to their place. Turns out it's in this apartment that was 3 stories up and had this tiny stairwell in the middle of the hood in this really rough neighborhood. So we do that once, which took over an hour. We're sweating, and it didn't even fit up the stairwell, so we had to pass it outside the back door, up the fire escape, and back inside onto the 3rd floor. And then we had to go back and get the next couch and do it again. So it ended up taking about 4 hours to do the whole thing. And so sometimes this isn't convenient, and sometimes it's a total adventure, and there's snags, and it's a mess, but it was the most fun I've had in a while when that had happened. It was so cool to be able to meet these people, to connect with them. And oh yeah, by the way, on our way out of the apartment, the mother saw that we had a baby, and she offered the most hilarious gift to me. But she said, I make 3 or 4 times milk than most mothers, and I have tons of it in my refrigerator. You can just take like a couple gallons with you so you can feed your child my milk.
Given it shall be given. Running over with milk and honey.
This is, overflowing. A whole new meaning to shaking around, pressed together, overflowing. But we didn't accept that offer, but it was an amazing experience because I said yes to something, and poor Lydia was like by herself walking for a while, but it's not, I guess I bring that story up because it's not always simple and it's not always convenient, but it's always satisfying and it's always meaningful and it's always joyful when you get that opportunity to give something away.
But I love that because, again, within this framework that generosity is a state of mind, you were looking for ways. When you have a generous heart, you look for ways to bless people. And here you are going on a walk with your little family, but you saw a need and you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. And again, like you just shared, what you were hoping was going to take a pretty quick amount of time got messy and took a long more time, but you also got to press into some new people, some neighbors that you also got to meet and interact with. And that's just the beauty, I think, where God tests us and says, get to know my people. This is a way to do it. So what about this third point of identifying creative ways to give? Creative ways to give of your time, talent, and treasure. This past weekend, that was an exercise I facilitated by just identifying these 3 domains: time, talent, and treasure. And we took an inventory of all right, where are we giving right now? Where might we like to give more of? Where's an area we might want to learn more about from one another in the group? So how do we approach that? And what are some even creative ways that you guys have explored giving of these time, talent, or treasure?
Man, I'll give an example of one of the ministries that our family has adopted for decades. In fact, this was even back before I came here to the farm 22 years ago, back in Florida. We were huge sponsors of the crisis pregnancy centers. And that's always been something that we sponsor through our businesses, but then also we as individuals, so something that we can include the kids in. So we've just been huge supporters of our crisis pregnancy centers. So we've fixed some things that there is a percentage of all the gross monies that come into, for example, my main business, Coaching for Christian Living, which owns Professional Christian Coaching Institute. A certain percentage of all of the proceeds goes automatically to just supporting our local crisis pregnancy center, which has subsequently, over the 22 years we've been here, it has spawned 12 other centers throughout the state of Missouri. So there's huge numbers of other centers that have been funded in part because of just that automatic practice. When we started our business, Mount Tabor Media, which is a publishing house, we did the same thing. A certain percentage of the sale of every single book by any author that comes out automatically goes. So, okay, that's one thing, but that's pretty easy. It's a conviction. You set it and you forget it, basically. I also serve on the board of that pregnancy center. So there's a time and talents kind of a thing, helping with direction. And my daughter owns a photography company. Alyssa Jean Studios does professional grade photography. And so she always volunteers to do mommy and me photos at no cost for all of the moms who have their children and keep those babies. And so any of the photos that you see in the flyers, brochure, on the website, all that kind of stuff is from her at no cost. She goes to the pregnancy center walk and takes photos of that. Two of our kids have had audio and visual like videography companies of their own where they do that kind of work. They volunteer for the banquet every year, and they help with the AV services of the live stream of the speakers that we have come in. The kids go around and get money for people for the walkathons to just get sponsors and put people in. When we have the banquet, 2 of our daughters volunteer to do the check-in, checking people off of their little iPad when they come and give them their badge to welcome them to the thing and show them where their table is and that kind of stuff. So there are multiple ways, time, talent, and treasure, that I think we can give to anything that we feel strongly about. Even here at the Institute, we reserve 3 slots in every essentials class that we teach that are free to pregnancy centers. So all across the U.S. and Canada, we've trained, I've completely lost count of how many people who work at those centers, they've been trained in coaching for free because we block out, a full class is 30, so we block out 3 seats that are free seats. And those are always requested. Our academic advisors know to give them away. I don't think there's any end to the number of ways that you can creatively give if that's your desire. If you've got a passion about it and you're just saying, Lord, show me, he's like, oh, I'm glad you asked. Let me give you an idea here, there, and everywhere. And it is such joy.
That is awesome. I totally heard all of those time, talent, and treasure and the ways your entire family gets to give to that type of ministry. And I know the other 3 of us on the screen, that similar type of ministry is near and dear to all of our hearts. Our moms are also heavily invested in those areas. So that's pretty awesome. McGreevy, I want to turn it to you because you shared something over the week, and I've heard you share it before, and it's just a fun example and a unique way to give generously. But can you talk about how you and your family approach the Christmas cards in your house?
We love this one because it involves the kids and they get to participate and see what we're doing too. So toward the end of the year, we set aside $1,000 to randomly give away. And when I say random, it's actually not random. You know, all those Christmas cards that you get in the mail that are on a card and it has a picture of that person's family and a pre-populated message. And sometimes people write on them, sometimes people don't. But anyway, we collect all those Christmas cards and put them in a bag. And one of our kids reaches in and mixes them around. And we say a prayer before that. God, just help our kids pick the card for the family that needs this money the most. So they fish around in there and it's a big moment. And we pull out that card and that family gets a money order, which we try to conceal our identity, but it doesn't always work because they find the location. But they get a money order for right around $1,000. And so can you imagine on Christmas just having an envelope show up with $1,000 in it right around Christmas time? I know I'd love that to happen. So, you know, if anyone's out there listening and wants to send me that, I am open to receiving that. But I think the coolest part is that our kids get to experience that, be a part of it, see it, participate in it as well. So that's been a fun one for our family.
Yeah, that's a cool, unique idea. And Niemeyer's will be sending 10 Christmas cards to you this year.
I know for me and Ruthie, the funnest we've ever had with giving is some examples like that. Like we've had a lot of times where we'll give like a ridiculous amount at a restaurant where we can tell that the waitress she's working a day before a holiday. And you know that she's saving enough money for her kids or her grandkids. So we've left $100, $150. But like get the kids involved as you sneak out of the restaurant and look at the lady opening the card that your kids can share the same joy. That's
a really just a good and practical example though, Jamie, of just blessing someone's socks off with an amazing tip. In fact, our friend Nick Pavlidis shared over the weekend how routinely when they go out to dinner as a family, they will always pick up someone else's tab and they kind of get the kids involved of like, hey, look around and pick out a table and we'll go tell the waitress like we're going to pick that tip up or we're going to pick the whole tab up. I just love those kind of practical examples of engaging the family, especially into this topic of generosity.
If we're spirit-led on how we do those random gifts, we have no idea of the impact or the healing that could happen based on God's timing. A couple weeks ago, we all got to go over to Fran and Ann McGreevy's house, Michael's parents. Me and Ruthie were going through a really hard time where we were really sacrificing as a family to pay off our debt. We had almost $90,000 in debt. I'll try to say this without crying. We got a check in the mail from Fran and Ann for $500, and it just had a note saying that they were proud of us, and they had just acknowledged the fact that we were sacrificing, that they were really proud. It created so much healing, just the timing of that. I mean, now when we do those random types of giving, it's because of the healing that took place in us when that happened. So if we're spirit-led when we do that, we can go away knowing that the healing or the impact that giving can have could never really be quantified. It could just keep on giving and giving.
It is powerful, Jamie. It is powerful. So what about you? When it comes to living well and giving well, we encourage you, in fact, we might even challenge you to take inventory of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Maybe you want to sit down individually, perhaps as a couple, and just go through that inventory together. Where would you like to give more? And examine your heart. Examine the generosity within you. How could you grow that? How can you put to use your time, talent, and treasure in remarkable ways to bless others?